gone through a period of time in your practice where your caseload feels a little light or even a little quiet? And you start wondering why that might be. And then the other fear kind of creeps in of, well, if I'm not making income, how am I going to cover my expenses? Hi, I'm Lauren Hamilton, accountant for therapists, and I help therapists and mental health professionals with just this question. And I've actually worked with somebody before who was experiencing this and was able to kind of help them get through that period of time. And I want to share how we did that. So, what can often happen is, you're going month after month and you feel like you've got bookings and you've got sessions that are scheduled, and sometimes you might have one or two that maybe doesn't show up. Maybe there's a cancellation at the last minute, just things like that in normal scheduling events. But sometimes maybe there's a month or two where you're just not getting as many sessions scheduled or things are being canceled. And maybe you kind of notice that that's maybe at the beginning of the year or maybe even in the middle, like during summertime when maybe more people are traveling, especially with school out, and if people have kids, or could be the opposite for you, like maybe you are a child therapist and you see more kids in the summer because they're not in school, so maybe your business is a little bit more busy during the summer months, whereas maybe the other months they're not as busy. So the first thing is just to be aware that this happens to everybody. There is a seasonality to things and there is a rhythm to things. People do have buying behavior, and I feel like that's kind of a tacky way of saying that, a buying behavior, but maybe spending behavior. But some people, they want to spend their money on something else for a period of time and then they come back to you. All of this, of course, just depends on the clients that you work with. But I guess what I'm trying to get to at the root of this is that seasonality is normal, and that goes through any business. So don't jump to the conclusion that it's something you're doing, or there's something out there that's preventing people from being able to schedule sessions with you. But when this does happen, there is a very real feeling of uncertainty and a little bit of unease about, well, if I'm not seeing clients, I'm not making money, and if I'm not making money, then how am I going to cover my expenses? And so that's a real thing. That's a real anxiety. That's a real feeling to have around the situation, especially, if you're feeling like I'm not going to know what the next month looks like. And, maybe it's my marketing, or then you kind of feel like this pressure. Yes, I have to say yes to everything now because nothing's coming in. But what you're really kind of going through right now is more of a cash flow problem, not a confidence problem or not a practice problem. So if you are experiencing this right now, or you have before, and you want to make sure that if it does happen again, which in all honesty, it probably will, these are kind of some steps to do when you're in that experience or you're going through that period of time to help get you through to the next time when things are, a little bit more busier or flourishing again. So the first thing you want to figure out is, what is your baseline number? And what I mean by that is, what are the expenses that you have to pay each month? So knowing that number, like, okay, this is the absolute minimum amount of income that I have to make each month just to cover my baseline expenses. And so this number is going to give you a little bit more clarity and stability around, maybe because you're not seeing as many clients, but you are seeing enough to at least cover your minimum expenses. And to get that baseline number, you really do need to look at your spending habits. So again, maybe it's not, I feel like I use meals as an example because it's just so easy, but maybe we're not eating out as much, or maybe we're not taking as many lunches out, or maybe we're not ordering as much DoorDash because it's so easy, to get that when you're in between seeing patients. Maybe we're bringing lunch more, or maybe we're making our own coffee in the office more. And so again, just really getting clear on, what is it like you have to pay rent every month, you have to pay your utilities every month, you have to pay for your software, you have to pay for your medical biller, because if you're not billing, then you're not earning anything. So again, just going through all of those things that are must pays. The other thing to try to do is to look at, like, maybe when this happened before, and look at the trends for that time period. So maybe you can kind of spot things a little bit earlier to when they happen. So just for the ease of this video, just talking about summer, let's just say like June and July are typically always slower session months for you. So if you know that in the beginning of the year and you know that you kind of need to start to save a little bit and bank up maybe some of your like cash to be able to get you through these slower months, because it will again start to pick up in August, September, and then when school gets back in session, that's when a majority of your clients can start coming back in. So thinking about that trend so that way you know in those summer months it is going to be a little bit tighter income wise. However, because you have recognized that, you know that in the months leading up to those months you can prepare for that a little bit better. Maybe some other things that you might want to think about during this time too are cancellation policies. Maybe this is a good time to look at what are those? Do you even have those? If you do, is that a good rate to be charging? Like if someone does cancel at you at the last minute and you do charge them a cancellation fee, does that fee make sense? Are you collecting that? I think a lot of times therapists feel icky about doing that, but you have to think about it that this is the time that you are setting aside for them. And if they decided to cancel on you at the last minute, now barring that there wasn't some kind of emergency or, big, big thing that, really did prevent them from coming to your session that day, that aside, that is something that you could have given time to another client of yours. So, and your time is valuable. This is your service. People are coming to you for your time and for your knowledge and expertise. And so to really try to think about that and try to destigmatize the icky feeling around charging that cancellation fee. The other thing with that, and not to get onto a tangent about cancellation fees, but being upfront with your clients with that and just telling them, hey, I have scheduled my time to be with you. And obviously, things happen and events happen that we have no control over. However, if it is an event outside of those reasons, I am going to have to charge you a cancellation fee because that is time that I could have spent with, somebody else. Anyway, not to get not to get any further on that, but that is a very real thing and it is a very real feeling. So just thinking about that, you might also want to think about if you have a waitlist system, maybe thinking about if somebody has been on trying to get in to work with you, maybe that's when you can reach out to them and see if they're ready to come in at that time, because you have time to spend with them, especially if they're new and you have to set up those sessions a little closer than maybe what you do with some of your more regular or seasoned clients. The big thing though to kind of think about in this time period is don't make any decisions out of fear. So, a lot of times if we get into situations like this when we're feeling uncertain or we're feeling a little unsafe or insecure, we might make some decisions based out of fear. So, at this time period, just really before you make any business decisions or purchasing decisions or anything like that, just take a moment and kind of recenter, regroup, really think about what you're doing, think about the intention of that. Maybe even if you have the time, sleep on it. I mean, they do say that for a reason. I'm sure you know that, but just take a minute to really think about it and think about, am I making this from a good place or am I making this decision out of fear? Because a lot of times, I see people who are getting into these situations and then they think, oh, well, I gotta cancel this and try to get my money back for this. And it turns into this whole big situation. And then, in a couple months, everything just kind of works out again. So, again, just taking some time, recenter, regroup, and again, just kind of looking for those patterns of, does this make sense for right now? What are some things that I could be working on? This might be a great time to look at some of your admin policies, or maybe even yourself, like take some time off and do some self-care and, work on a new skill or studying something that, would be helpful for your practice in general. So again, as I said in the beginning, seasonality of things is a real thing, and that is true for every business, not just for your practice. But being able to recognize those patterns, those trends, knowing when those things might be coming is great. Maybe this is something that just completely threw you off and you were not expecting whatsoever. And that happens too. Again, just making sure you know that baseline number, just knowing this is the number that I need to hit. And if you do get into a point where you're not going to be able to hit that, then don't make any decisions out of fear or uncertainty. Just take a minute and just kind of think through, what are some of my options? What can I do right now? And maybe that is when you need to get some support. And, while we're talking about money outflow, but it might be something like looking at videos like this, looking at someone else's videos, or taking a walk, or, anything like that, just to kind of clear your mind and come back to the situation. And I don't want this to come across as dismissing your feelings, but again, and I'm sure as you work with clients, it's always better to, again, recenter, come back to a place of calm. Take a walk, take a 5-minute break, get a snack. Don't do this hungry. But really thinking about those things and knowing that baseline number. If this is something that you have gone through and you had a method for getting through it, I would love to know what that is. And you could put that in the comments if you want to share with everybody here, or if you even just want to message me personally. I love connecting with you guys and learning more about what is helping you in your practice. If you are in a situation right now where you might need support or feeling like you're a little bit lost in the sauce, I guess, as they say, let me know. I'd love to help support you. This is what I love to do. I love accounting and all things mental health, and I put those two together to run my accounting practice for a therapist. So yeah, would love to support you in any way I can. Hey, thanks for watching. If you want more support around your numbers, I have other videos just like this in my channel. And don't forget to check out the resources in the show notes below. Until next time, be well.